This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred method. Welcome to the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection webinar. Please note, any website or email that I mentioned will be posted in the chat. For those seeking business license assistance, you can visit the Small Business Center here at City Hall or call 312-74-GO-BIZ. Also, business license can be applied for or renewed online at chicagobusinessdirect.org. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. To learn more about this program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. We encourage all attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box to send your questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Today's webinar is entitled Filling Stations, presented by the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Lawrence Smith for us to begin.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Smith, a business consultant supervisor with Business Affairs Consumer Protection. Today we're going to go over filling station licensing. Let's go to the next slide. The Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection ensures a fair and vibrant marketplace for businesses, workers, and consumers in the city of Chicago. BACP licenses businesses and public vehicles, regulates business activities, protects consumers from fraud, enforces Chicago labor laws, partners with business service organizations, and provides education and resources for businesses. All right, so first we'll go over basic application information. To ensure that your proposed business location is properly zoned, use a City of Chicago zoning guide and zoning map, and always consult the municipal code and city staff. Secondly, you want to determine your legal entity and ensure that you are registered with all the required government agencies for EIN numbers, IDOR numbers, etc. File your license application with BACP either in person using the business information sheet, which is online. Also, we have an online application system called Chicago Business Direct. The application process, if tobacco is included, will include a background check of all the owners, as well as a measurement to ensure that the tobacco dealer location confirms with all relevant distance informations. All right, so we're going to go over filling station basics. So the biggest thing about the filling station is getting the zoning approved. If it's a filling station, 100% of the time, zoning will ask for a driveway release letter, which is provided by the City of Chicago Department of Transportation. Zoning will also ask for a diagram of the facility. The diagram should be labeled. If there's any discrepancy with an address, which is common in most new builds, zoning may ask for a house certificate from the City of Chicago Department of Transportation. Once you get through BACP and our initial checks, there will be inspections from the BACP task force, if tobacco is included. Also, regardless, there will be a City of Chicago Fire Department inspection, and the City of Chicago Department of Finance does an inspection. We call it an inspection, but it is just a debt check across all city departments. Now, we're going to go over the basics if you have tobacco. Tobacco dealer applications are different from other license applications in two respects. As we go more in depth, generally, retail tobacco dealers may not be located within 100 feet of any school, childcare facility, or recreational facility for children under 18 years of age, or within 500 feet from any secondary school. No licensee may sell flavored tobacco products within 500 feet of any secondary school, unless it is a retail tobacco store. BACP will take measurements as part of their license application process to ensure compliance, and in the office will offer pre-measurements upon initial applications to ensure eligibility before the applicant makes a full license payment. So that just means for most tobacco, it's $830. However, you can opt for a pre-measurement. It is $250. Secondly, tobacco dealer license applications will undergo a fingerprint-based criminal history investigation of any owner, corporate officer, or any person that has a 25% or more interest in the business, as well as every on-site manager. We charge $40 per person. Next slide. So I covered this with our tobacco presentation, but there is a 100 feet rule side note. And this is just the municipal code writing. The daycare center may be considered a school when programs or a portion of a program which serves children who shall have attained the age of 3 years and which are recognized by the State Board of Education. Educational program or programs serving children who shall have attained the age of 3 years and which are operated by a school which is registered with the State Board of Education and which is recognized or accredited by a recognized national or multi-state educational organization or association which regularly recognizes or accredited schools. So in layman's terms, it could be a Catholic school, or a state, a city or a local municipality operated high school. It will count against you. Next slide. All right, so fees, filling stations, they vary. It's $200 plus 12 cents per gallon of gasoline stored on the premises for a 2-year term. A separate license is required for each business location. And the application fees for tobacco are based on the 1-year term, which is totally different from the filling station, which is the 2-year term. A retail tobacco dealer pays $500 plus $330 for each register for selling tobacco. All right, so next we'll transition into the enforcement part of the presentation. It will be conducted by Michelle Murray, a business compliance investigator.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Murray, and I am from BACP, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Business Compliance Enforcement. Our basic function is to make sure businesses are in compliance with licensing and related requirements by checking for violations. A couple of years ago, we established the ACP program, Active Compliance Program, in which an investigator will visit the business to ensure questions and are answered and provide information that the business owner may need about compliance. If violations are found, the investigator provides actionable steps for compliance and enforcement is not issued. Although we do not have on-site inspections for the filling station license, we do have inspections for certifications. We do have a gas team that goes out, and the inspectors make sure that there are no leaks, hoses are not frayed or worn, make sure that the numbers are not jumping for the price. During that inspection, 5 gallons of each grade of gas is used to check for the volume of gas in the water. After the inspection, the gas that has been used is returned. If there's not a pass for the certification, corrections will have to be made and another inspection will be conducted. Next slide, please. So this is the certification application. It's for new businesses or even existing businesses. If you do have new pumps coming in and the investigators arrive at your location to do an inspection, you can actually let them know that you have new pumps coming and they will put off the investigation. You just let them know the time frame they'll come out and do another inspection. And that way you will not receive 2 fees. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it just provides the information of where you are to deliver the signed application. The preferred method is by email. The address and telephone number is listed on that slide if you have any questions pertaining to that. Next slide, please. So one of the main things that the inspectors check for is price marking, just to make sure that everything is consistent. So if you have your sign that's advertising the gas prices, everything must match the gas prices that are on the pumps. The inspectors, they check everything above ground to ensure compliance. On this slide, it just goes into greater detail as to the requirements for those signs and the prices that are posted. Next slide, please. Each filling station must provide the sign for 311 to ensure customers are aware that they can call in complaints. So whatever the complaint may be, they can call that complaint in, and investigators will go out to address those complaints. Next slide, please. In the filling station, the clerk is to always ask if the customer wants their receipt. It is up to the customer whether they want the receipt or not. And if the receipt is not issued at the pump, that is actually a violation. The gas station must ensure that all receipts are functioning properly. Next slide, please. So this slide talks about self-service. In Chicago, we really do not have many self-service stations. If I remember correctly, there are less than 5. But on here, these are requirements that must be posted for those self-service stations and also the split island stations as well. Next slide. So this slide addresses ADA compliance. The attendant must always have these signs posted at each station. So that way, if someone needs assistance, they're actually aware that the gas station, the filling station is actually operating in compliance with ADA requirements. Next slide. This sign must be posted at each pump. The telephone number of the gas station must be posted, and the times for the service is also posted. So the times for the service for people with disabilities is actually determined by the gas station owner. BACP does not dictate what those times are. It just says that the times must be posted. The next slide, please. The restaurant requirement. Several years ago, we did a project to address the restaurant requirements in the gas stations within the city of Chicago. And during that project, it was revealed that some gas station owners do not actually want their restrooms available simply because of safety issues. Then there was another piece to that some gas stations, their restrooms were constructed, they were approved to be constructed without this restroom requirement in mind. So we do have an exemption. The gas station owner must fill out the required paperwork to have an exemption. It is not up to them to just say, you know, I don't want my restroom available for the paying customers, or I don't have the adequate restroom. You must go through proper channels to get that exemption. Next slide, please. With tobacco regulations, over the years, we've had to change the ordinance to address issues that has come up. Tobacco must always be sold from behind the counter unless you're a retail tobacco store. The difference between a tobacco retail store and a store that actually sells tobacco, the tobacco retail store, 80% of your sales must be from tobacco. In addition, in the retail tobacco store, you must be in a freestanding building, which means you can't have a building on either side or anything above that location. You cannot accept any coupons or reduce the price for tobacco products. I'm sorry. It is illegal to conceal cigarettes. Prior to the new regulations, the business owners had gotten extremely creative. They would build fake walls, fake ceilings, and hide their cigarettes in the drawers when there was a tobacco inspection. So if illegal cigarettes, which are actually unstamped cigarettes, are found and they're found to be concealed, that is an additional charge. Next slide, please. Tobacco sales to minor. We actually have a program to address this. There's 2 investigators that goes out with the minor. 1 investigator goes in with the minor, and they do act as though they're not together. So the investigator is undercover. If tobacco is sold to the minor, a citation is issued on site. If there's no tobacco sold, then they do go to the next location, and they do not announce that that was actually a tobacco inspection. And with the tobacco products, it can be anything, whether it's vape, tobacco, papers, cigarettes, anything that's related to tobacco. Tobacco sales to minor sign must be posted, visibly posted. Next slide, please. So this is the tobacco sales to minor sign that must be posted. If this sign is not posted, that is a violation. A citation will be issued. Next slide. So that is the tax stamp, and that will be considered illegal cigarettes if the tobacco products do not have the tax stamps affixed. When unstamped cigarettes are found, they're confiscated, and citations are actually issued for that. Next slide, please. Flavored tobacco, flavored liquid nicotine product. On this slide, you will see all the flavors that are included for liquor, for flavored tobacco, which is illegal. Next slide, please. Record keeping. This is another charge that was created simply to address the unstamped cigarettes. When investigators are doing a tobacco inspection, we also check for the records to make sure that they were actually purchased, as opposed to someone going to, let's just say, Indiana, Kentucky, Missouri. They must have been purchased here with the required stamps affixed. Next slide, please. The inspection cooperation. When there's a tobacco inspection, the employees or owner of the business cannot lock the doors. They cannot lock safes. Prior to this ordinance being created, business owners, they would lock the safes, they would lock drawers, they would lock doors when there was a tobacco inspection. So now we had to create this to address that violation. When an investigator announces to the tobacco inspection, The person will have 30 minutes to arrive to the location. So for example, if there's a tobacco inspection being conducted and whoever's on the premises, whether it's the employee or the owner, and they say they do not have the key for that door or for that drawer or safe, then we do allow 30 minutes for them to come on the premises with the key to unlock it. If no one arrives within 30 minutes, that is a violation and citation will be issued. Next slide, please. So we do have hefty fines for tobacco violations. They range from $1,000 to $5,000. If there's 3 or more violations within a 2-year period, then the tobacco license will be revoked. Next slide, please. On this slide, you see pertinent information. BACP, they're very good with providing information. Also, when investigators are doing their inspections in the businesses, we also provide information, but this is another resource where you can always find more information. Next slide. And this is the address, phone number, email address for weights and measures if you have any questions pertaining to weights and measures. Next slide.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Varsho. I'm an attorney with the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. I prosecute those types of enforcements that Michelle was talking about at 400 West Superior on behalf of the department. So what I'd like to do is give you an overview of exactly what to do should you land in the unfortunate situation of receiving an administrative notice of ordinance violation, talk about the process a bit and some of the common charges you may be receiving should you receive a citation. Next slide, please. First is to understand your citation itself, I kind of want to just go over what the citation is. If you receive a visit from a BACP inspector and they do issue you enforcement, they can do that in one of 2 ways. The majority of those ways would be just issuing it on site during that inspection by handing it to a person who is an agent of the business, and that would be considered proper service, and you would be required to appear at the listed date and time the citation requires. Another option is that you may receive one of these citations in the mail, and this would be sent to your registered address or your business address. That would also be considered proper service, and you would be required to appear at the date and time in question. So in order to understand the citation, I'm just going to break it down bit by bit because some of this information may be useful when you're attempting to settle your citation or even challenge your citation. What you see here is the top third of an administrative notice of ordinance violation, or commonly known as a ticket or a citation. Circled in red is the citation number. They'll always start with an R followed by a series of numbers. And then below that, you'll have all the identifying information for both your business as well as the person who the citation was handed to. The first line there, you'll see it says respondent. That'll be the name of your business, followed by your business address and your business phone number. The second half of that, where it says person served, will be the person that this citation was handed to during the day of the inspection. If this was issued by mail, it'll be the registered agent, but more than likely it'll be the person that's handed to. It's important to note, and it's also important to explain to your employees that just because they are the person served, that does not mean that they have any liability for this citation. Rather, it's just confirmation that this citation was properly served to an individual who's an agent of the business. Next slide, please. In the middle of the citation will show you the bulk of what your violation is. Here is a violation for a tobacco sales to minor. You'll see on the left-hand side the offense. There's a sample of what the offense is. It gives you a brief description. The middle where it says section is the code section of the Chicago Municipal Code, where you can find the exact law of what you're being charged with. Here you'll see it's 4-64-345. 4-64 is the title and chapter of the tobacco ordinance. So anything related to tobacco will be under that chapter. And I do encourage all of you, if you have not reviewed it before, to take a look through the ordinance, especially the filling station sections, which would be 4-108, or the tobacco sections, if you do have a tobacco license for 464. And you can view those by simply Googling American Legal Chicago. American Legal is the name of the company that we use to house city ordinances, and it's always in your favor to review the applicable law that affects your business. Next to the section is just a brief description of what exactly occurred. Here, the city's alleging that there was a sale of some Blackwoods Russian cream cigars for $11 to a minor, conducted during one of the tobacco sales minor investigations that Michelle mentioned. Below that, you'll just have some identifying information, where it occurred, more than likely it'll be the address of your business, the date and time it occurred, and when the citation was issued. You'll see here that the date and time for the violation as well as the notice are the same because this was handed to somebody in person. Sometimes those don't match, and that's likely because that notice was sent through the mail at a later date after an investigation had occurred. And then at the bottom, you'll just see the investigator who gave you the citation as well as their STAR number for identifying purposes. Next slide. Finally, this is the last fourth, rather, not third, sorry, but rather the last fourth of the citation. Just some basic information, including, most importantly, where and when you must appear to handle your citation. For example, this citation was scheduled for the 30th of August, 2022 at 9 a.m. at 400 West Superior. This last fourth of your citation is always where you're going to look to see when you have to appear at court. Next slide, please. So now that you've received a citation, you are due to appear at an administrative court. And this is kind of a term of art used in the legal realm. An administrative court is a quasi-judicial body, not necessarily what we would call an Article 3 court or any other type of court. It's a specific type of court that helps to deal with municipal violations. They do have lower standards of review, meaning that such concepts such as hearsay, or other evidentiary concerns are not necessarily at play at this court. In typical courts, I'm sure everyone has heard the word hearsay, but that is not something this court deals with. This court gives the respondent, more than likely you as a licensee, the most ability to handle your citations in the least restrictive way possible, meaning they want to hear everything you have to say, so they will try to take as much in as possible and let things kind of slide that wouldn't at other administrative bodies. The hearing facility is at 400 West Superior. There is what we call a docket cap of $50,000 per case, meaning if your case is assigned number, the fine cannot exceed $50,000. In addition to 400 West Superior, if you are in the unfortunate position of facing a revocation, you likely will receive notice to appear before the Mayor's License Discipline Commission, commonly called the MLDC. This body is the one that's capable of revoking licenses, and it is at room 805 at City Hall, 121 North LaSalle. Those types of violations will all be sent via US First Class. You will not receive a citation for that type of hearing, rather it will be a specialized notice for you to appear. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So once you get to the court, there is kind of a standard procedure to follow in order to have your citation heard. You'll appear at the front of the building, go through a metal detector with security, and then there's a long hallway in which you can proceed to desk B to fill out what they call an appearance form. An appearance form is just a specialized document that tells the court who was there and if they have authority to be there to handle that specific citation. While it's true that at the Department of Administrative Hearings, you do not need an attorney in order to handle your matters, you do need to have an attorney if you are a licensed business or an incorporated business and you're appearing before the Mayor's License Disciplinary Commission. Next slide, please. What we have here is just a copy of that appearance form. You need to fill out one of these forms for every time you visit the Department of Administrative Hearings for your case. So for example, if you have a matter scheduled and it gets continued for a hearing or for you to hire an attorney or for whatever reason, you would have to fill out another one on your second visit. If you come and settle your case that same day, obviously this one appearance would be necessary, but the forms are fairly self-explanatory. At the top of the docket, you'll need to include your business name as well as your business address, as well as a docket number and a citation number. Citation number is the one that we reviewed earlier. A docket number is not something that you will be able to find until you visit the Department of Administrative Hearings. That docket number will be available on a wall posted right outside that desk where you pick up this form. The person who's appearing on behalf of your business will then need to put their name on the form. That person, as I mentioned, does not need to be an attorney. More than likely, it'll be yourself or an agent of your business. But in all actuality, anyone that you give authority to appear on your behalf can file an appearance on your behalf and handle the matters at DOEH so long as they have authority to do so. Because you are a corporation, next slide. Because you are a corporation, the second half of the form is going to be relevant. You'll have to indicate what exactly your relationship to the business is. If you're filing an appearance on your own, you can click that first box saying that you're the owner or president, vice president, etc. If you do hire an attorney, they would then fill out that second box. And then lastly, if you have just someone appearing on your behalf that you've given authority to, but they don't necessarily have a direct relationship to your business, they can always click that third box or even that fourth box and kind of write in what exactly their relationship to you is and what the nature of their authority is. And then lastly, the bottom of the form is self-explanatory. A signature, a date, address, and phone number of the person appearing is required. Next slide. Once you fill out your appearance form, you're typically going to go into the courtroom where your case is scheduled, and you'll have a chance and an opportunity rather to discuss your matter with the city attorney. More than likely, if you're appearing for a citation that is given to related to your filling station or your tobacco license, it's more than likely we'll be speaking with me. I'm in room 107 on Tuesdays and Fridays. That's when those cases will be heard. You'll hand me your appearance form and I'll put you in line with everyone else. You'll be called in order of your appearance. I'll call you back to discuss and we'll seek to come to a resolution of that citation. The majority of the time, people will agree to plea out, meaning they'll agree to a settlement offer by the city. Next slide, please. Or there are several other types of outcomes that could occur. If you wanted to continue your case, you can do so. Typically, the city will not object to a continuance so long as it's for a good cause and so long as the case has not been continued for more than a few times. We do need to keep things timely, but we do understand that there are reasons that cases need to be continued, such as you'd like to hire an attorney or perhaps speak to an attorney about the outcome, or maybe consider your options before deciding. Or if you know at that time that you do not want to settle your case, that you want to challenge the citation in court, then you would motion to continue it for a contested hearing. You'll discuss with the city attorney when the best time for that hearing would be. That would be a time that would be good both for your schedule, but as well as for the inspector's schedule who issued the citation, because more than likely they would be needed to testify in order to prosecute the citation. Excuse me. Lastly, if there are some citations that may be dismissed for compliance. There may be some citations that are dismissed as a part of a deal, meaning if you receive more than one citation, you might be able to negotiate with the city to go on some of the higher charges, but that all depends on what the city's prerogative is and what is the type of charge. There is no guarantee that your charge will be dismissed. More than likely, the charge will be prosecuted for a plea. Once you're done speaking with the city attorney will tender the case to the judge. They will call you up before the judge to confirm that what you and the city talked about was what you wanted to do, and they'll tender you what's called a final order of disposition. Kind of acts as a receipt for everything that you've done there. If for whatever reason you happen to miss your hearing date, you do have 21 days from the time that that case was defaulted. The term default is what's used for when you miss a court case. You're held in a position of default. It's called a liable by default, is the technical term, meaning that you were held liable for all of their violations, likely for the maximum amount that those violations allow, because no one had appeared. However, if you do file a motion with the court within 21 days of that default, you can ask the court to set it aside, and the case kind of starts anew, and you can discuss with the city at that time. Time is of the essence in these types of violations, so it's important you file that motion immediately. If you file a late motion, it may be scheduled in room 105, what's called the late motion call. This is a separate call handled by outside attorneys for the city. It's a collection firm, and this BACP, specifically me, would have limited authority to intervene. So it is important that you act on your matters timely. Lastly, if a final order was entered by the Department of Administrative Hearings and you wish to appeal that order, you can do so at the Daly Center on the 6th floor. Of course, all administrative remedies must be exhausted for attempting to contact the Daly Center and file your appeal. But this is something you would need an attorney at this point to do, because the Daly Center won't accept a appearance by a pro se litigant, meaning someone without an attorney, which is different from the Department of Administrative Hearings. Excuse me. Next slide, please. There's also an option that we introduced during the pandemic for people who did not want to appear in person for obvious reasons. The program was a success, so we kept it. And I strongly urge anyone who receives a citation to utilize this option. It's a process we call remote adjudication. And all this information is available on your citation as well. On the bottom, the very bottom of the citation will have this email address and the same information, but you'll just need to send an email to BACP-administrativehearings@cityofchicago.org. Make sure to include all your identifying information, including the business name, address, and your citation number. At that point, the email will be sent to the prosecuting attorney, and they'll be in contact with you about your case with an offer to resolve. Next slide, please. I think Michelle did a great job of going over some of the common violations, but I do want to touch on a few for both filling stations and tobacco. For filling stations, obviously it is required that you have a license in order to operate. Any day that you do not have a license, you could be fined per day for operating without that business license. So it's important to make sure your license is always up to date. If you think that you have finalized everything for your license but have not yet received a copy, it's important to reach out to the Small Business Center to ensure that you have indeed completed anything. If there is a hold in your account, even if you've paid for your license, you technically do not have a license, and you could be charged for that. Excuse me. And again, those could be prosecuted on a per day basis. Not having a filling station license does have a fine range of $500 to $1,000. Not displaying your license is another common charge you'll receive if you don't have a license, which has a fine range of $200 to $1,000. It's also important to make sure that you do have that public restroom that was discussed, unless you have received an exemption. Minimum fine for that is also $500 to $1,000. It's important that during your inspections, you have all your certificates of accuracy. If you have your pumps certified, that's great. If not, you could receive a violation for that as well. So ensure that all your pumps have been certified and that your certificate is accurate. Smoking is prohibited in business locations in Chicago generally. I think that's more important when you're talking about filling stations, and that's why they have their own special code section, 4-108-070. Smoking is prohibited specifically in filling stations, but again, in all licensed businesses in Chicago. The last two are a bit of a, not specific to filling stations, but I wanted to include that because filling stations do tend to unfortunately be the center of some illegal activity that no one wants to have on their business. And I'm speaking mostly about shootings or any kind of unsavory activity that may be happening in your parking lot. In the city of Chicago, there is a requirement for licensees, including filling station licensees, to notify the police anytime illegal activity is occurring on site. So if a fight breaks out, if someone is shot on your premises, if someone is selling drugs out on the on your premises, or even selling, cell phones without a license, doing something. If they're on your property and engaged in illegal activity, you do have a duty to report to the police that illegal activity is occurring. And if you don't, CPD more than likely will issue a citation for 4-4306A. So it is important you make that call. In a technical sense, that call has to be made from a landline, but so long as you do make a call from a landline, a cell phone, whatever, that will be accepted. So just make sure you notify by calling 911 so that your number is recorded, and that, if you do receive this type of citation, you can prove that you were in compliance. And lastly, a lot of these filling stations I know will sell food product. If you are able to sell food product, it's important to know that all of those products are properly dated, meaning if you have expired product that's intermixed with product that is not expired, you will likely receive a citation. And this applies to you regardless of when this food product came into your possession. What I mean by that is if a distributor comes to your location and stocks your shelves with expired product and then leaves, that now becomes your problem. So it's important to really go along with your distributors to ensure that what they're doing is up to your satisfaction. Because if an inspector comes in and cites you for having expired food product, it does fall on you and not that distributor. And you could be fined at least $50 per item, depending on how many items of food you have. And that price could increase as a minimum, depending on what type of food product it is. But the range for that type of violation is $50 to $2,000. Next slide, please. For those filling stations that have tobacco licenses, there are some common violations that Michelle also went over. I'd like to just expand a little bit on what those violations are. For the most part, anything under the tobacco chapter is going to have a fine range of $1,000 to $5,000. So tobacco violations are very costly. Those include the tobacco sales to minor citations, which Michelle touched on. It also includes selling cigarettes in a container less than 20, meaning if you're selling a loose cigarette in terms of 2 cigarettes, 3 cigarettes, 1 cigarette, that is also a violation. Anywhere in the city of Chicago, you cannot sell flavored liquid nicotine nor flavored tobacco wrapping papers. You do have to have that warning sign posted that was discussed, but it's important to note that it's not just any warning sign, it's the warning sign that Michelle had on the previous slide. There are other warning signs that are required by the state and the county, but if you do not have the specific sign that is required by the city of Chicago, you could be held liable for not having that sign. Michelle also mentioned record keeping. Inspectors will issue citations for record keeping if you don't have your records on hand. You also need to cooperate with inspectors when they're there. If the safe that you discussed is not open within 30 minutes, a citation is likely. Some things not exactly mentioned are drug paraphernalia charges. If you sell what are commonly known as glass roses, that does have a minimum fine of $2,000. And these are kind of glass tubes that are typically used for the ingestion of drugs. They include a little rose as a trinket, but the true nature of the product is for the ingestion of drugs, and the city does prosecute those violations, almost all violations. So ensure that the product in your store doesn't match what would be listed under 464, 510-4. It's also important to remember that the person selling tobacco has to be of age to buy tobacco. So if you're hiring a minor to work in your store, that's perfectly acceptable, but that minor cannot sell tobacco. And if they do get caught selling tobacco, it is a $1,000 to $5,000 fine. And lastly, Michelle did touch on selling unstamped tobacco. And stamped tobacco is more of an egregious charge, at least in terms of how the city views it. And this is because it isn't something that's negligent or something that might just be a mistake. It's quite purposeful. Someone is going across state lines and then smuggling tobacco back into the state to then sell at a lower price, avoiding the tax laws. So when an inspection occurs for unstamped tobacco, if you're found selling unstamped tobacco or even in possession of unstamped tobacco, you will receive at least 3 charges. And that's for not having a county sticker, not having a city sticker. The tax sticker is what I'm referring to, but also a storage fee, because the BACP inspector will confiscate that tobacco. Depending on how much tobacco is found, The minimum fine for even one pack of cigarettes that's unstamped would be $3,051. And that depends on how much tobacco is found. So it can go up exponentially. Anywhere past 40 packs or under 40 packs, I should say, would be the $3,051 at minimum. But then it is a $25 or $50 per pack computation if you have anything above 40 packs. Next slide, please. The last thing I'd like to just touch on that revocation hearing that Michelle also touched on. This is a screenshot of the revocation section of the tobacco ordinance 464. Again, I highly recommend everyone review the ordinance if you're dealing in tobacco, because not only will you lose your tobacco license if you receive 3 strikes within 2 years, it's more than likely you'll receive all licenses that you have or that you hold. That when I refer to a strike, that means it's an eligible charge that you have been found liable on within that 2-year period. They're all listed there. The ones that are on the previous slide, almost all of those were strike eligible charges. But the big ones, again, are unstamped tobacco. Those are considered a strike. If you sell tobacco to a minor, if you are engaging in the sale of flavored liquid nicotine or flavored tobacco, if you don't have your tobacco warning sign and minor or tobacco warning sign to minors posted, if you have not provided your record book, that is also a strike. And also the cooperation with inspections, meaning if you didn't have that safe available to be opened within 30 minutes, that would also be a strike. So it's important that you make sure that you protect your license and you do not engage in any of the activities, because the city is or does prosecute these matters vigorously and will revoke should 3 or more of these occur within 2 years. There is one caveat. If you are found for selling loose cigarettes twice within a 2-year period, you are also eligible for revocation. So it's a kind of a lower standard there. Only twice in your license would be eligible for revocation. And I'll hand it back over to Stella to wrap up the presentation.
Looks like we have a few questions. First question, does BACP enforcement team for building violations too?
No, we don't enforce building violations. That'll be the Department of Buildings.
Question, is there an ordinance on a number of filling stations allowed within an area?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, next question. What's the processing time of the application?
Once we have all the documentation, you're probably looking at about, in most cases, 5 to 10 days once payment is made.
To own and operate a filling station, does BACP require any special training to happen prior to obtaining a license?
If your question is pertaining to business owners needing special training, no.
Correct. It's a no.
Now, the gas team that goes out to do the inspections, they actually do have special training.
Okay, so the person applying don't need to have any type of special training?
No.
Okay. If I need to speak to someone at BACP regarding the filling station, would this be possible, like in person?
If it's for enforcement, no, you don't come to our office. If there's a in-person conversations when the investigator is on site, but you can actually follow up phone calls.
Okay, let me search to see if we have any more questions. Doesn't look like we have any more. So I thank you guys for your presentation today. I hope all of our attendees got the much information that they were looking for from today's presentation. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to BACP outreach at cityofchicago.org. Again, that's BACP outreach at cityofchicago.org. And to learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. And that's it. Thank you, guys.